Hate to see you hungry.
All right, welcome back to Radio Wasteland, and we are talking about Aleister Crowley with our guest William Ramsey. So let's hop right into it. How is he connected with 9/11 and the New World Order? What is the connection here? How could this be bridged?
Well, that's a good question. So if you read through Crowley's stuff, he believed in numerology. 11 was really his primary number, but it wasn't just the number of magic, it was the number of the New World Order. And so 11 was very important, but he also used to do all these scribblings through gematria, which is a means of attributing numerical values to letters. And the prime numbers of his religion, or the prime words, were agape and polema, both added up to 93 in the English gematria. So 93 became an important kind of code or number for Aleister Crowley. And people often that are higher up in the Crowleyan teachings just sign their signatures. After signing their signatures, they say 93, 93, 93, which is short for love under law, love under will. So will being polema, love being agape. So 93 is an important number. 77 references Crowley in his Liber Oz. Also, 77 is kind of like the Lady Babylon, and all adds up. So he had this kind of symbolism of Lady Babylon. So these numbers and the ideas of Crowley really was to transform the world. His idea was to illuminate the world, so to speak, with his religion. So he died in 1947, but the events of 9/11 have not only his numerology infused through him, but also, I believe, the underlying gist or intent of the event was occult in nature. So the date of the event is the 9/11. The buildings are 2/11s, right, broken into 3 separate buildings of 33. So there's all kinds of numerology in the event, but the main planes were 11, 93, 77, and 175 in Crowley's ritual magical system was to worship the God you adore. So I do believe that was a kind of adoration number that was added to it. And the first plane to hit the World Trade Center was Building 11. 93 supposedly dropped in Shanksville. 77 was the one that I believe hit the Pentagon. And 175 was the second plane that hit the towers.
All right, you're losing me with all these numbers, though. I'm not really understanding the correlation of these numbers. I understand that they were important to him, but I'm not making the leap, understanding the leap.
Okay. So then, I mean, we can talk about that. But so then, you have this event, this kind of potent of the 9/11 event, which I think functioned as a kind of magical working, something like Crowley would do. And I believe that Crowley's ideas of the New World Order are a kind of occultic ideas. So 11 years before the events of 9/11, George Bush Sr. gave a very important speech where he referenced the New World Order. So I believe that was made with the intent and knowledge of the foregoing or future events of September 11th, 2001.
I see. So basically one thing we're saying here is that Crowley's motivation was to sort of recreate the world in his own plan for the future.
I think that he was going to create his own religion.
Right.
And I believe that his religion is consistent with satanic ideals, and that somebody else picked up on that, either through the secret society network, the OTO, or whatever happened after Crowley died, and carried that forward, carried out this objective, and at a very important time meridian, 9/11, 2001.
So we're basically saying here this is like they picked up the torch and they're carrying it.
Well, that happens, right. So that happens all the way through Christendom or any really religious group, is after the leader dies.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So if you read my book, Children of the Beast, might be surprised at how many people picked up Crowley's torch, so to speak. Timothy Leary thought he was carrying on the work of Aleister Crowley. And this was a huge kind of change agent influencer of the 60s who actually found that there were amazing synchronicities between his life and him. So there's a lot of people who were influenced by Crowley who thereby influenced common culture. Then if you want to go through the Bush family and talk about Barbara Bush, her mom, who was in France at the time, that Crowley was in the time, then you could actually have a kind of familial spawned between Crowley and the events of 9/11.
So we're thinking, with this line of thought, is thinking that 9/11 was not orchestrated by the terrorists that they would have you believe.
No, of course not. Yeah, no. It was a structured event, planned ahead. I think the terrorists were window dressing for the real perpetrators. I mean, if you look through the ideas of, like, David Rockefeller, who built both the Twin Towers. They used to be called David and Nelson after the two brothers when Nelson died. They were the founding real force behind the building of the Twin Towers and also the UN building. So they were involved and the UN is the real idea to create this kind of new world order. So I do believe that both of those buildings and both of those things were created with the intent of hastening the breaking down of old national boundaries and creating a new world. Absolutely.
Now, what would the motivation behind that be? To basically fear people into following?
Yeah, I think that the real motivation, I think that's a multi-tiered motivation, but I do believe it's to put the secret society elite system into power, which I do believe happened. I believe it was a wealth transfer. I believe the insiders knew what was going to happen in advance. It made changes based on their financial changes in life, and the slave shall serve. Everybody else didn't know what was going to happen, so I do believe the intent was solidify power, which I do believe happened, and solidify really a much more fascist, draconian state, which you can see with the so-called Patriot Act, which isn't patriotic, and all these other changes that happened after that under the Bush-Cheney administration.
Right, but a lot of people are going to view this as being Democrat, Republican, conservative, liberal.
Well, they're not picking up the real deeper thing behind the Democratic and Republican because there's a hand behind both parties. It's not some kind of coincidence or some kind of random thing that both the Democratic and Republican parties basically been run by people out of Yale affiliated with the Skull and Bones Society for at least since Reagan, and so and even Nelson Rockefeller was the vice president, right? So that was under Ford. So the long-term impact of these families goes back decades, really.
So how am I?
And if you really want to get into Democrats, they're really elite Democrats. They're neo liberals. They're not. They don't care about the working class they ostensibly prattle to. They sold everybody's manufacturing out to China, undercut them with foreign labor, so they don't care.
Well, that's completely true.
I think they're insane.
Can't argue with that part.
Right? Yeah, that's true. Well,
you agree with that, or you don't agree?
No, I do agree with that. I think that's completely correct.
Because that's the elite grip, right? So if you can fix the elections, if you can get your own people into power, I think that's really what's been happening, even not just in this country, but I believe that there's an elite selection process to see who's going to run the country, and it's always been that way.
Yeah, no. I'm definitely not disagreeing with you. I'm just trying to formulate my question in my head, which is good timing here. We're coming up on break. We're talking to William Ramsey. We're talking about Aleister Crowley, 9/11, and the New World Order. And come on back. You're listening to Radio Wasteland.